Hey, what's new and exciting? It's Kevin O'Shaughnessy, and today I want to talk to you a little bit about rhythm patterns and how they might not be as complicated as they appear. If you're new to the channel, thanks so much for stopping by. Feel free to have a look around. I post videos mostly on guitar playing, technique, and mechanics, but I also dabble in music production and songwriting. So if any of that stuff sounds interesting to you, then please consider subscribing and adjust your notifications to taste. Now, on to the video. What would you say if I told you that there were really only 12 patterns that make up the vast majority of music that we listen to today? That's right, 12 little rhythm patterns, okay? Not really terribly complicated. And really the only way that we get new patterns out of them is by changing the relationship of the pattern against the beat. We can insert rests for certain notes in the pattern, and we can tie patterns together. But other than that, that's it. We have basically 12 patterns. There are probably some avant-garde music out there that can come up with more and interesting things, but for the majority of the stuff that we listen to on a regular basis, 12 patterns pretty much covers it. Now let me show you how this works. The first pattern that we are going to talk about here is the whole note, okay? Very simple pattern. It is simply one note that lasts for 4 beats. Now, if you don't know anything about music notation, actually, this would probably be a very good time for me to just point out a couple of key parts here. First here, although it's irrelevant for this conversation, we have the treble clef. The treble clef sits on this staff of 5 lines, and we put notes both on the lines and in the spaces in between the lines. And this treble clef lets us know where G is. It's often known as the G clef because it's circling this second line from the bottom, which we call G. This part right here is called the time signature or the meter signature. And the top number 4 here tells us that there are 4 beats in every measure, which is this space. Let me get out of this tool here, which is this space right here between the clef and the bar line here. As you can see, as I scroll this way, we just get more and more and more and more bars. Or measures. Those two words are used interchangeably in music. So the top 4 tells us how many beats are in the measure. The bottom 4 tells us that the quarter note gets 1 beat. I'm going to explain that in just a second. So let's get back to this whole note. So right here, what we have is an open or an empty note head. This is called a whole note, and it lasts for a duration of 4 beats. It fills a whole measure. Now, if I get rid of that and I put in a half note, okay, this is a half note. Basically what it is a whole note with a stem on it. And this only gets 2 beats. All right, so we've taken that open note head, we've added a stem, and we've cut the value in half. Now, if I get rid of that and I put this in here, we've now filled in the note head. We have a quarter note, okay? So in other words, when we get back to the time signature here, 4 beats in a measure, and the quarter note gets the beat, that means that the quarter note, you can fit 4 quarter notes in 1 measure. Pretty simple, right? Let's keep going on with these durations. There's 2 more that I want to show you. If I get rid of the quarter note here and the next note, if we put a flag on the note like this, we get an 8th note. Add a second flag, and we get a 16th note. So you'll notice we started with an empty note head, and that had our longest duration of 4 beats. And every time we add something, a stem, we fill in the note head, we add a flag. Every time we do that, we cut the value of the note in half, okay? That's very important because this is why we only need 12 patterns to do the vast majority of the music that we listen to on a regular basis. So what are these patterns? Well, let's take a look. The first pattern here is, as I said, the whole note. It's very simple. It's just boom, right? You just hold the note for 4 beats. That's it. That's all we've got. So the next pattern is very simple, 2 half notes. We'll put those in there. So we've got bum, bum, simple little pattern. The next pattern here is 4 quarter notes. 1, 2, 3, and 4. And that's what it looks like. And we just got bum, 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 bum. Not a problem, right? Every note, and you'll notice at that point, every note that I'm singing is on the beat that I'm snapping with my fingers. 1, 2, 3, 4, that's the pattern. Now, obviously, if we change the pitches, then it becomes a little bit more musical, but for these purposes, we're just talking about the rhythm pattern itself. Now that we've got whole notes and half notes, or excuse me, now that we've got half notes and quarter notes involved, now we can start mixing up those two values. Let me get back to the right measure and what I'm looking for. So the next pattern we can do is a half note and 2 quarter notes. And let me scroll this over. There we go. So there's our pattern. And the next one, you might have guessed by now, is 2 quarter notes and a half note. And we'll come over here. We'll add that. And there it is. That's what that looks like. So a half note and 2 quarter notes. Bum, bum, bum. Piece of cake. This one is just bum, bum, bum. Also very simple. So you can see like none of these patterns are terribly difficult. We've got another one here. We've got quarter note, half note. Oops. Just because I want to be somewhat consistent. There we go. And quarter note again, right? So we got bum, 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 right? Piece of cake. And then there is one thing that I did neglect to mention, and that is you might have noticed that we've got a whole note for 4 beats and we skip immediately to a half note for 2 beats. We don't have any duration that stands alone on its own like that is specifically a 3 beat, okay? In order to get the 3 beat, what we do is we take a half note and we add a dot to it, okay? Now, this is the only time that we see in music where adding something to the note makes it longer. All right, so far, every time we've added something to the note, the stem, we've colored in the note head, we add a flag. Every time we do that, we cut the value in half. The dot adds half of the note's value to it. So if I put this on a half note is worth 2 beats, half of that is 1, this becomes 3 beats. So I hope that makes a certain amount of sense. And if it doesn't make any sense, then I hope you can just at least remember it. Because the next pattern is dotted half note, quarter note, bum, bum, right? So it's almost a full measure, but not quite. And we've got an extra note in there. And then the last pattern for this category here is quarter note followed by dotted half note. And that one sounds like bum, bum. So hopefully that's pretty straightforward. Okay, now this is 8 of the 12 patterns. The next group of patterns is in groups of 3. All right, and between these sets of notes, we've got groups of patterns in 4 and groups of patterns in 3. And with that, we can mix and match and basically create everything we want. It's pretty amazing. So what we do is we take our dotted half note. Okay, this is worth 3 beats. So you can see the time signatures we talked about before. The 3 tells us how many beats are in the measure, which is 3. And in this case, the quarter note is still the unit of measure. Okay, so this means this measure, we can fit 3 quarter notes into the measure. And so what I'm going to do here is that's what this pattern looks like right here. There is the 3 quarter note pattern. We've got 2 more left. And the first one is going to be half note, quarter note. And the last one, or yeah, that was the next one. The last one here is going to be quarter note, half note. All right. So if we were to count all this out, right, our first pattern over here, let's get back to it. So we've got bum, right? And if I were to string a few of those measures in a row, it might sound like bum, bum, bum. 3 quarter notes is pretty straightforward. Bum, 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 right? It's kind of a waltz thing. And then half note, quarter note, we've got bum, 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 bum. Now we've got quarter note, half note, bum, 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 right? So that's it. So I'm kind of, I apologize for sort of racing through this, but I wanted you to see that these are really all of the patterns, right? So if I zoom out here, that's probably not going to look great on the screen. I am sorry. I didn't get a chance to really plan out exactly how I was doing this. I'm a little rushed putting this one together, but you can kind of see here. All right, here's the bulk of our patterns. Here's our whole note, 2 half notes, 4 quarter notes, half, 2 quarters, etc. And those are the first 8 patterns. And then finally, we've got the last 4 3 patterns. Now, this is where stuff gets interesting. How do we create the other patterns, right? Surely, these are very rudimentary patterns, right? We don't just hear these in music. I mean, obviously we do hear them in music, but it's not all we hear. There's got to be more than this. Well, the first way that we can change these rhythm patterns is by changing the pattern's relationship to the beat. Okay, now here's a good example. Let's take a look at the quarter note pattern here. Let me zoom this in here so we can see what we're doing. Now, if I highlight this measure right here and I come up here to the utilities, I'm going to change the duration. And I'm going to change these durations. I'm going to cut them in half. Okay, I'm going to change it by 50%. And boom, what do we have here but 4 eighth notes? All right, now the way we're used to seeing these, I would imagine, looks probably something a little bit more like this. This right here, when you have eighth notes in a row like this, we beam them together. Usually not more than 4 at a time, although there are exceptions to that. But if you see a single eighth note, you'll see it with a flag. If you see a bunch of them grouped together, they'll be under a beam like this. And we, of course, would count this 1 and 2 and, okay? So these 2 eighth notes, each of these 2 eighth notes would fit in 1 quarter note. But look at what we have here. What we have, just like 4 quarter notes, both of these patterns are 4 notes of equal duration. That's what it is. That's what we've got. That's the pattern. Now, all we've done is we've changed the relationship to the beat. So whereas the 4 quarter note pattern would be bum, 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 right? 1 attack per beat. This one is going to be 2 attacks per beat, and it's only going to take half the measure because these notes are half as long as the quarter notes. Bump, 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 bump. And that's what that would look like. But it's still 4 notes of equal duration. Now, if we were to take that one step further, and I were to highlight this measure one more time, I'm going to change that duration by 50% again. And what I'm going to get is 16th notes. Now, what I have here, let me move this out of the way so we can actually see it. There we go. Now, these are 16th notes. Notice the second beam, okay? That's what we do with all of the second flags that took us from 8th notes to 16th notes. These are counted as 1 E and da, and they all fit in 1 beat. Da, 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 da. Okay, so if I were to do the quarter notes to the 8th notes to the 16th notes, it might sound something like this. Dun, 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 dun. Da, 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 da. Okay, but all 3 of these patterns all derive from the same concept of 4 notes of equal duration, all right? Does that make sense? I certainly hope it does. If it doesn't, ask me questions in the comments. I love questions. I do my best to answer every single one of them. Now, this is the same thing for all of these patterns. Here we have a half note and 2 quarter notes, but if we cut each of these in half, we get a quarter note and 2 eighth notes. So that same thing of bum, 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 simply becomes bum, 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 or bum, bum, bum. Same kind of thing, right? It's the same pattern. We're just speeding it up to fit into a different number of beats. We got 2 other quick steps that we're going to do here. Now, one of the things that I said that we could do is we can replace any note in here with a rest. So if I come here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this and I'm going to turn this into a rest. Now, a rest in music is a measured silence. So this symbol right here is the rest for a quarter note. That's a quarter rest. And so in this case, we'd have bum, bum. All right, so notice on that 3rd beat, there's no sound. Bum, bum. That's what that pattern sounds like. That's the variation on this original pattern. Bum, 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 right? We turn that into a rest. Oops, excuse me. And now we get bum, bum. Same kind of idea, but we're just silencing that part. Now, the final step into how we can make more patterns out of the few that we have here is to tie patterns together. All right, so we do this with this little curved line you might have seen connecting notes like this. This is called a tie. And a tie in music is where you play the attack for the first note, but you let it ring through the duration of the second note. So you don't play this note again. So this pattern right here, if I get through, let me restore this quarter note here. Oh, hello. There we go. Now, if I restore this without the tie, if I were to do these two patterns together, we'd get bum, 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 kind of like that. But with the tie, I'm going to sing through these two notes, and I'm not gonna say another syllable on this one. It sounds like this. Bum, 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 bum. It effectively turns these two notes here into a half note. All right, so now we've got the effect of half note, quarter note, half note, quarter note, half note, and it stretches the whole pattern over 2 bars instead of 1. The reason we use the tie here is because of this bar line, right? We measure music, just like you might measure a wall or something like that, right? You have feet and inches. It's kind of the same thing, you know. We've got, if this could be the measure here can be the inch, and these are all halves and quarters of inches if you want to think of it that way. And since we're going over this bar line, we're going over the measure line here, we use a tie to put a half note in a place where it wouldn't ordinarily exist. And of course, we can change this as well. This could become a quarter note, these could become eighth notes, and there's all kinds of variations that you can do simply by taking a pattern, replacing one note with a rest, tying other notes together, and that's how we come up with all of the unique patterns that we hear. But at its core, it's just these 12 patterns, and the way we change those patterns' relationships to the beat and what we do for variations in terms of adding rests and ties. So I hope you found that useful. This is just a very quick overview of how rhythm patterns work. So let me know in the comments if you want me to go deeper into any of this stuff. But I've been working with a couple of students recently, and this kind of information has really been helping them out. So I thought I would share it with you guys as well. So if you did find it useful, give me a like. Let me know that you want to see more of this kind of stuff. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments below. If you want to see more in-depth information about rhythms and how they work and how you can apply them to the guitar, let me know. I will address that in future videos. In the meantime, stay safe. Enjoy practicing the guitar. I hope you're having a lot of fun with it. I hope this helps you get better, faster. I am Kevin O'Shaughnessy, and I will see you in the next video. Thanks so much for watching.